So once again, very quickly, this is the maximum territories of the British Empire. Here we have the British Empire at the end of its greatness. So 1921. This is before all the troubles started. So the war was won, but there was the second one coming, and of course one of the historians of the British Empire, Neil Ferguson, says that the reason why the British Empire dissolved was that it went bankrupt. So probably it did. So if we compare the map of 1921 with the newest map showing the contemporary situation, UK overseas territories, you can see the difference, I hope. What is left of the British Empire are just a few small scraps of land or small islands somewhere. So we'll look at them in a little moment. You can see some possessions on the Atlantic Ocean, one in the Indian Ocean, then a little more places in the Caribbean, a bit of Antarctica, but it's mostly for science. It's a kind of scientific base. One very remote place in the Pacific, and two small places in Europe, meaning Gibraltar, and a few military bases on the island of Cyprus. So let's start with those European possessions, and let's move on to the ones that are further away. So the first place that still belongs to Britain, and probably the best known foreign territory or overseas territory of the United Kingdom, is Gibraltar, which is an archipelago on the very southern tip of Spain, and of course a debatable a contested place because Spain would like to have it back. Britain doesn't want to give it back. So this is what Gibraltar looks like from the Spanish side. There is this big mountain with the ruins of a military fort with some monkeys. The monkeys are quite characteristic for this place. They are quite cheeky, really. They steal things from tourists. Yes, they tried to steal a bag from me once. And you can also see the airport, which is so small that it actually extends into the sea itself. We talked a little bit about Gibraltar already when we talked about the UNESCO sites, because apparently this was one of the last places in Europe to have the Neanderthals living there. So Goram Cave Complex was added to the list of World Heritage Sites in 2016, and this is the cave with the Neanderthal people living there. Next place in Europe, as I said, is Cyprus. Of course, not the whole island of Cyprus, but two military bases. You can see them marked on the map here in red. Cyprus is a very interesting place. It's also a place which is contested between Greece and Turkey. So the capital city of the island, called Nicosia, is actually one of the last cities divided between Turkey and Greece. So the idea to keep the British military presence there after the Second World War and after all the troubles and fighting on Cyprus, mostly starting in the 1970s, was that they would be a kind of peacekeeping force. These are basically two parts containing military barracks and some shops, but you can find little interesting things like those very, very typical British telephone booths. So yeah, they are officially part of the British territories, the overseas territories, so they do not belong either to Cypriot Greeks or the Turks, but to Britain. Let's now move to the Caribbean, and you have quite a lot of places. If we look back on the general map again, there are quite a lot of places. The most important is Bermuda. So here we have Bermuda Islands. The capital city of Bermuda is called Hamilton, and you can find generally a small town with some tourism and fish production, but also those phone booths are there. The most important place is on the other side of the islands, the historic town of St. George, which was also given the World Heritage status. You can see a few snapshots here. A typical colonial city in the Caribbean, with little white houses and Protestant churches and a port, and that's what you have here. Some more places belonging to Britain in the Caribbean. We have Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands, British Virgin Islands, Antigua and Montserrat. You can find them on the map of the region here, and these are usually small islands with historically, of course, some commercial potential. These were the places where coffee or cotton or sugar were harvested and then planted. Now the main industry there is tourism, so that's probably why they are still not granted independence or given back to the people of those places. So probably, if we talk of British overseas territories, the majority of them are in the Caribbean. So that's here. Some more places that still remain in the British possession and what they are famous for. So the Falkland Islands, as you can see, their location on the map off the coast of South America. That is why Argentina wanted them, and it even resulted in a short but not entirely bloodless war in 1982. You can see some images of military ships. this is a very cold place and not very important commercially. As you can see, this is a place where some penguins live, and there is nothing really there. No natural resources, no agricultural, commercial, not really commercial value, either in agriculture or in tourism, but they are a very good strategic location, and this is why Britain wanted to keep them. So here we have the close-up South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. So these are the names of those smaller parts of the Falkland Islands. The war was won. Some say personally by Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister at the time. She was very proud, and she basically presented herself as a kind of military commander who showed the world the greatness of Great Britain. Now it's perhaps a bit more problematic moment in British history, but still, at least historically, it is something that most people remember when they talk about the Falkland Islands. Then we have some islands in the Atlantic Ocean, basically three small archipelagos: Ascension Island, St. Helena, and Tristan da Cunha. So Ascension Islands, as you can see, the main town called Georgetown. So a small colonial place with not too much historical relevance. The one that is remembered in history, and there is another cat coming. So another place, yes, of historical relevance, and something that most people remember, is the island of St. Helena, and it is remembered for the fact that Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled there between 1815 and 1821. This is where he died. This is where he stayed for a time. So you can actually locate it on the map now. After Napoleon escaped from the island of Elba, and he returned to power for quite memorably 100 days. He was defeated again, and after the Battle of Waterloo, he was defeated for good, and he was taken to a place much further away from Europe, to one of those British possessions, that is the island of St. Helena in the Atlantic Ocean. The third small archipelago is one of those places that received UNESCO status for nature. So two islands, Gough and Inaccessible Islands, were given UNESCO status for nature. As you can see again, so they are in South Atlantic Ocean, part of the Tristan da Cunha archipelago, and once again, these are cold places with some penguins nesting there. So here we have one of the native birds of these UNESCO heritage sites. Basically left alone for nature to take care of itself, and that's the point. There is very little human involvement in these places. Three more places. One is British Antarctic Territory. So as you can see here on the map, it was very arbitrary. Just they divided the continent of Antarctica between various countries, mostly for scientific research. So the British Antarctic Territory is home of scientific base, which you can see on the photo below, and otherwise that's it basically. Probably the largest of the overseas territories in terms of size, but also the coldest and most inaccessible, with basically no native population, just a few scientists taking terms on this base. Two more places, one British Indian Ocean Territory, Chagos Archipelago, as you can see here, quite remote location in the Indian Ocean. There was a native population. Here we have one of the men living there originally. They were forcibly removed. They were relocated to other islands in the vicinity. Now it's criticized as unfair and basically imperialistic. The small archipelago is used as a military base. So once again, this is purely strategic location that is important for Britain, and this is why they keep it. The last place is the most remote of them all, Pitcairn Islands in the Pacific Ocean. One of these islands is also given UNESCO status. Henderson Island was given UNESCO World Heritage status because of nature reserve and because of the birds that live there. This island is quite Pitcairn Islands are quite interesting, again for a historical reason. This is where the sailors of the ship called the Bounty settled after they rebelled against their captain. Some of you may be familiar with the story. It was based it's a real story. There were quite a few films based on it called Mutiny on the Bounty. We are talking about the 18th century, 1789, so just as the French Revolution was happening. The British ship called the Bounty faced their own problems with the crew organizing a mutiny, so some sort of revolt against the captain and the officers, and they put them on a small boat and set them afloat. Actually, those officers and the captain survived, miraculously almost, and the crew of the Bounty looked for a place to live. They happened to find Pitcairn Islands in the middle of the Pacific, as you can see here, and they settled there. There were some local people living, so they basically intermarried, and they started a small population which is living there until today. And those of you who watched the YouTube channel called Jules Guides, the guy who has the walking tours of London. Actually, if you go very far back in the channel, he started his adventure with being a YouTuber by making a documentary called Take Me to Pitcairn, because he was fascinated with the story of the mutiny on the Bounty, and he really wanted to travel to Pitcairn Islands and to see what they look like today. And he made a kind of documentary film showing his expedition, his grand tour to Pitcairn Islands, and how he got there, and how he talked to the people, and how difficult still it was to get to this very inaccessible part of the British Empire. So if you'd like to see it, and if you'd like to learn more about the mutiny and the modern reality of this very remote place, go ahead. Jules Guides. I'll leave you the link on Moodle, so you can find it. And that's it. Dear students, we have reached the end of the course. So perhaps it's a good idea to go through the presentations again. Maybe we rewatch the videos if you like, so you are ready to take the final test on Moodle. And I hope you found something inspirational enough to inspire you to make your own presentation, to design a trip, a cultural trip somewhere to the United Kingdom. Actually, the overseas territories count as well, if you wish. So that's it. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you during the live meet. Thank you.